Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Inside Politics. Now, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiangi and his Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho have lately come under fire from Deputy President William Ruto's camp for alleged campaign to demean the office of the Deputy President William Ruto as part of alleged schemes to derail Ruto's 2022 Statehouse bid. But what really are the differences between Matiangi's office and that of the Deputy President? Matiangi explains.
Domiciled under the Executive Office of the President, the Ministry of Interior could as well easily pass for the operational engine of government. But this coveted center of executive power has lately come under sharp criticism, landing Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiangi and his Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho on the firing line of Deputy President William Ruto's political lieutenants, who now accuse the duo of poking their noses uninvited into politics in a manner to demean the DP's office.
Mimi mwenyewe ndio nilikuokoa kwa mambo ya Ruaraka. Mimi Kipchumba Murkomen mwenyewe kama majority leader nilikuokoa. Na kama uko na maswali enda Hansard ya Senate. Mimi nilikutetea kwa sababu tulikuwa na wewe tukifanya consultancy kwa street kabla hujapewa kuwa waziri.
Sisi tunafanyia Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta kazi. Ndio rais wetu. Na rais akituamulisha vile kazi inafanywa, mimi na Kibicho tutafanya hiyo kazi vile rais ametuamulisha tufanye hiyo kazi.
Msiseme ya kwamba eti mumetumwa na rais muende muongee na madharau kwa wananchi. Mimi namjua Uhuru Kenyatta rais wetu. Ni mtu mungwana, ni mtu mpole, hajawahi kutumia madharau kwa wananchi.
But is there any love really lost between Ruto's camp and these two arguably most powerful civil servants? At the Wednesday launch of the Building Bridges Initiative report, Ruto's gestures by far carved the picture of a besieged man braving a list of speakers, largely dominated by persons perceived to be viciously opposed to his 2022 State House bid. Yet his allies now point an accusing finger at the Interior Ministry for allegedly micromanaging the events program and invitation of attendees, ostensibly to get a substantive crowd at Bomas to humiliate Ruto,
To lecture the people,
as happened to his right-hand man Senator Kipchumba Murkomen when he protested the day's turn of events. Still, only 4 months ago, Kibicho's name was the talking point of an alleged assassination plot against Ruto.
A video.
A matter still before court where State House Digital Director Dennis Itumbi is yet to be allowed to play what he claims to be a video recording of the said meeting allegedly chaired by Kibicho at the basement of Lamada Hotel. Allegations Kibicho swiftly dismissed as rubbish.
Who has complained? You know, I'm yet to hear someone who has complained. And I think it's better that we stop creating things that don't exist.
I would want to play, because it would assist the whole of this thing they are trying to investigate, the video of the meetings, because it would prove that a member who works for my bosses has actually threatened the life of the Deputy President.
Matiangi currently supervises all national government development projects, technically making him a superior to all his cabinet colleagues, while Kibicho heads the equivalent technical committee of all principal secretaries. The duo currently handle a budget of over 140 billion shillings, the lion's share of the ministry's allocations in the current financial year, and also oversee internal security, a feat analysts argue could explain their alleged closeness with the deep state political operatives said to be viciously opposed to Ruto's 2022 State House bid. But with the Kenyatta succession politics already at a fever pitch, his Mr. Fix-It and his principal assistant remain men on the spotlight as debate intensifies on the country's political roadmap post-2022. Matiangi, KTN News.
All right, now that builds the basis of our conversation right now. Let me start with Kipchumba Karori. We have a cabinet secretary who actually supervises all national government development projects, and it goes without saying it's a powerful cabinet secretary position right there. What do you make of all this? Is there love lost?
First of all, whether to supervise cabinet secretaries or not, what I have always asked or called myself to a meeting, when Matiangi is doing all that, what does Uhuru Kenyatta do? What is the remaining job for Uhuru Kenyatta? To be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces or what? At times I just ask myself, it's a question. Every time I'm told of that illusionary position of Matiangi, I ask myself, what is the role of Uhuru Kenyatta? But be it as it may, you have to realize that the Kenyans who gathered in Bomas when they were drafting the 2010 constitution had a reason why they wanted to depoliticize cabinet and to remain with the president and his deputy as the only politician. There was a reason. I might not be aware of what the plenary discussions were, but what we must do, and when you are heading a key ministry like the Ministry of Interior, and over time you seem to be heading into one political persuasion, you know it is not something, Jesse, that people are told. It can be seen. If you compare what, just an example, what the Senator of Nandi said and what Babu Wino, Edwin Sifuna said in Kibera, you realize that there is a problem somewhere. And you know, the Ministry of Interior is the ministry that has the monopoly of violence against all the state actors and the Kenyans. Two, there is need for civil servants to act in a manner that brings honor to the office. When you start seeing civil servants going to fundraisings and what have you, I think if I was the president, I'll have called all these civil servants to order. What do we get when we see Matiangi in a fundraiser? What does it help? When you have been, what are your roles as a cabinet secretary? The other thing, I also ran away from this thinking that Matiangi has capacity to fix our political problems. So I think calling him Mr. Fix-It is also blowing his ego beyond the roof for a simple thing. For how long has Matiangi been in the political circles? Very short. Two, Matiangi has not won any electoral seat. We do not know, he's a virgin politically. We do not know what political impetus he brings on board. But also, at times you realize that the state actors, there is some form of weakness in our state. When you compare how the Kibaki succession was handled and how we are handling the current succession, you realize that there are some weaknesses. You have to give it to Kimemia, Mutai, Ringo, name it. They did a fantastic job because even when Balala, Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto and others were in Pan-Africa saying this is Meza ni Serekali, the pandemonium was not that huge. And you realize that the other side, we had a sitting prime minister and a vice president and a host of ministers being on the other side. But all along, the Kimemia and Mutai Ringo maintained some semblance of calm within the center. So I think it is something that we need to address it going to the future, that whatever we are doing now, the repercussions might not be a 1+1 or a quick coffee thing, but it is piling up pressure to leading up to other problems. And there is reason why we should make sure that all the civil servants, they serve the governments. Governments come and go, but civil servants should remain there to make sure that the state continues in a manner that's not political. Because ask yourself today, what happens in the absence that Uhuru Kenyatta is not there? The constitution states who should take over. And when we have seen, or there has been alleged bad blood between the deputy president and Matiangi, what will happen? You know, those are eventualities that our constitution and the framers have headed there. So all these are things that we must put them in one thinking. And lastly, we must also ask the president. We realize that all his CSS are either busy vying for something, a governor in a village somewhere, and we know these has left us now. We don't know where Big Four fell in. We are now running up all manner of things. BBI came, nobody now is discussing BBI. From next week after Sonko, we will now go back to the same political, this one wants to be a governor here, this wants to take resources there. I think going forward, the president should be forthright and just tell these people, you either stop politicizing things or you go. Just another example. Just see what the CAS, Rachel Shebesh, was doing in Bomas. You could not know that she was a government official. She was heckling more than the people in a stadium, in a mashemeji derby.
Politician first, government official second, yeah?
Well, you know, Kenyan politicians are very funny. When we say that CSs should not participate in politics and they should not participate in harambes, I actually agree with that statement. It makes sense. Not because giving to society is a bad thing, but giving to society is a political tool. We may frame it as buying space in heaven or doing the right thing, but it's a political tool. But what I have a problem with is how what is good for the goose is not good for the gander. You see, there is a goose called Matiangi, there is a gander called Kiunjuri, but they are on different sides. So when they do the same thing on different sides, different politicians complain. I will leave that riddle there, because that is really what is at the crux of this matter. It is a matter of where some people are saying, when it is done to us, it is wrong, but when it is done to them, it is right. And that's really the big issue. But we need to ask the question that is it possible, as envisioned in the Constitution, that CSs could completely be apolitical? Is that a possibility? Even if you look at the United States of America, where they are supposed to be apolitical, Donald Trump has proven that they can become very serious political tools and even corruption tools, depending if you look at how many have been mentioned in corruptions in the United States of America. So we must ask ourselves as a nation that do we want political CSs, or do we want what we used to call permanent secretaries who are there to do a civil service and leave it at that? That is the big question. And that question arises from the issue that we feel like if the people from Central have the Minister of Agriculture, then their coffee and tea issues should be sorted out. That is how we view things. But if we got to the point where we saw these positions as national positions and not fiefdoms, then we would probably be headed somewhere. That said, the Ministry of Interior is inextricable to the office of the president, okay? And you must ask yourself, what has Matiangi done that is so wrong that has got politicians complaining so much? That's the question. What has he done that is such a cardinal sin that it is eliciting this kind of debate, this kind of emotion, and this kind of furor from the political class? Has he arrested anyone by his own order without due process? No. Has he overstepped his mandate? No. The question is, and this is the key issue, how political is his position being viewed? Because in my view, the biggest fear that certain politicians have is this thing that is being peddled around, that Matiangi is being groomed for leadership. But I would say, if you think Matiangi is being groomed for leadership, then you must be a novice to Kenyan politics. Matiangi, I am pretty sure, and I am 80% sure I am right on this, cannot win an election in his own village, because that's not how Kenyan politics works. If you ask Dismas, who's from Kisii, whether Matiangi has the political capital to move somewhere, it might not be necessarily true. I think that the Ministry of Interior is passionately trying to do its job, and they should be allowed to do so, and it does not give a good show of cabinet when cabinet is bickering in public. Cabinet has a rule called collective responsibility. Let them close those doors where they have those confidential meetings and let them hammer it out in there. The rest of us need to see a cohesive government and a cohesive cabinet that is headed in the same direction.
You know, they talk about in BBI, when they talk about the elections bit, and the idea that in future cabinet secretaries will be called from amongst their proposal, the suggestion will be called from amongst MPs and then a few technocrats. I think it is taking us back to the place where cabinet secretary positions, ministerial positions, were absolutely political in nature. And is Matiangi competent? Likely. Is he charismatic? Very. Has he been working loyally and hard for the Jubilee government? Absolutely. Why are we now surprised that he seems to be dabbling or mixing politics and his role as a cabinet secretary? Don't you remember during campaigns in 2017, he even said he was a member of Chinkororo? I mean, he has been part of this process of politicizing the executive for a very long time. And we should not be alarmed or surprised. This is simply because of the fracture within Jubilee, because the same jubilants who are now in Tangatanga and Kieleweke, who are all happily together in 2017, loving and praising Matiangi, are now up in arms against him. So it is only fair to see that at the end of the day, because Matiangi is now doing and listening and doing the bidding, rightly so, the head of the executive, who is the President of the Republic of Kenya, he will continue to do what he's supposed to do and as he's instructed to do, much to the ire and irritation of others who will now feel that he's using his position to either bash them or to undermine whatever it is they're trying to do. But that said, 11 people were killed on the road to Mandera yesterday. You know, the landslides in West Pokot, the unmitigated disasters, and Ministry of Interior is supposed to be there. If he is as competent, as committed, if he is indeed the super CS, I, as a tax-paying citizen of this country, would like to see more attention paid to real things. He has a massive budget. That budget is supposed to be utilized somehow, and it's not just to empower police to arrest Sonko. It is to do things that protect and preserve the lives of Kenyan people. And so this is where, as I said, as a traumatized population, we like stories and sagas. So when you see Ishungwa abusing Matiangi, I saw a clip somewhere circulating on social media of a very irate Kisii elder who was telling Ishungwa to come and we'll show him dust. You know, we like these side shows. We like the back and forth, and people are annoyed with each other. And then Ruto is castigating Matiangi. We do that, and we go back home, and our lights are off, we can't afford food. You know, the families who've been affected in West Pokot, now the Kerio escarpment, landslides, I looked at the advisory that's out. It's going to be bad for the next few days. What is Ministry of Interior doing in terms of disaster preparedness and disaster response? Let's do all of those things that you are supposed to do before you now start engaging in politics. And anyway, BBI seems to be taking us down that route where politics and governance will be one and the same thing. So, but before we get there, because we're still operating at the level of suggestions, please do your job, CS Matiangi and PS Kibicho.
Dismiss.
Well, you know, when you look at the formation of our cabinet, the substantive CS for Interior is President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Substantive CS for Finance is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And the substantive CS for Foreign Affairs is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. I think that needs to be very clear. Then number two, these are shadow boxing. When you come across any MP, be it Kieleweke or Tangatanga, saying that Matiangi is doing a shoddy job, or, you know, throwing unprintables at Dr. Matiangi, they should have the guts to face President Kenyatta on his head and tell him, we don't like Dr. Matiangi. Because Dr. Matiangi has been appointed to this office. He never ran for a political seat. There's no seat called CS for Interior where we vote in somebody. He was appointed, he was given this position. So in the event that you don't like what Dr. Matiangi is doing, and you're in the cabinet, next time when there's a cabinet meeting, look at President Kenyatta and tell him, I don't like what Dr. Matiangi is doing. Instead of sending out your troops to engage us in shadow boxing. You know, all these MPs, especially the Tangatanga types, every single day the sun comes from the east. They're throwing rocks on Dr. Matiangi. And Dr. Matiangi has reminded them times above number that my appointing authority is the President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. So if you've got issues with me, please look at President Kenyatta. And indeed, if President Kenyatta had issues with Dr. Matiangi, he would not be in office. He would go back to SUNY or someplace to, you know, sell his skills. Now, the tragedy of what we are undergoing today is that the cabinet is almost dysfunctional because people are taking positions. Who is going to align himself to Deputy President William Samoei Ruto? Who is aligning himself to President Kenyatta? And at the end of the day, what happens? Nafula and Mura are bleeding. And I'll keep on reminding them that Mura in Kisii is not interested in these catfights between Ruto and Matiangi. Mura just wants to be sure that when it's going to rain, she still be able to access food. That, you know, she can access the markets. That a socioeconomic welfare has been taken care of. So these people should have the guts And you know they're elected members of the National Assembly and Senate. They should have the guts and look at President Kenyatta in the eye and say, President Kenyatta, we don't like Dr. Matiangi, please fire him. Because it seems that if you are any public servant of rank and you are performing, if you don't go and kiss Dr. Ruto's ring, you are branded as a rebel, that you don't like these projects. So for how long are we going to sit as Kenyans here and see the cabinet engaging in this kind of untidy politics? For how long are you going to have public servants of rank frustrated and nervous and they don't know how to deal? Because if you're going to execute your job description, you may be termed as Kieleweke or you may be termed as Tanga. And at the end of the day, what happens? The Kenyans are suffering. Maybe President Kenyatta now needs to come out and call out his deputy and tell him, I find your behavior unacceptable. It almost amounts to insubordination. Because why do you want to send your troops every single day? Like, for instance, today, all of them are going to grace our churches, and they're going to be throwing bricks at Dr. Matiangi. And then also Dr. Matiangi is going to marshal his forces, and they'll also be exchanging words with this other side. So at the end of the day, they're using Nafula's taxpayer resources, because believe you me, wherever they go to these meetings, they don't go sell their tea or coffee and use their personal resources. They're using public resources, they're wasting public resources, and at the end of the day, what happens? When there's a terrorist attack, nobody responds. When the coffee prices are going down, nobody is taking care of that. When there's floods, all they can send is messages of goodwill that are tuko pamoja. But at the end of the day, if your house has been flooded, and then you get all these people, unfortunately, or rather, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how Bichache looks at it, this time around, there's no Sonko rescue to come and, rescue folks. But you see, the way these guys are fighting, throwing brickbats at each other, meaning that we don't have institutions to respond to disaster, we don't have structures to respond to Nafula's needs. And that's the elephant in the room. And, I'm really hoping that as these people are being used, the Tanga team leaders, they would actually have the guts when they go for the next parliamentary group meeting or wherever they meet the president in these public fora. Tell him, we don't like Dr. Matiangi, please go ahead and fire him, instead of engaging in shadow boxing. And I would easily venture to say that probably outside the deputy president in Kenya, all public servants serve at the pleasure of the president because the president is the appointing authority. So look at President Kenyatta in the eye and tell him, we don't like Kiunjuri in your cabinet, we don't like Matiangi in your cabinet, give us professionals so that we run out of this.
All right.
I think there is an erroneous statement that this man has made that cannot be allowed to go without being cleared. The only people who serve at the pleasure of President Uhuru Kenyatta are his appointees. The rest are public servants. That's why we have a delimitation of who is a public officer and who is a state officer. State officers, those ones serve at his pleasure. But public officers, those ones that are employed by Public Service Commission, are not at the pleasure of any politician. Those ones now serve under a commission.
You see now, you've introduced something else. I was discussing about the public servants who are being targets or victims of Tangatangas. Those are the ones I've said who serve at the pleasure of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. I'm not talking about governors or commissioners.
No, but I think you want to get lost in the bushes. What Dismas has said is quite correct. He's saying that public servants, now, to use your term, state officers who work at the pleasure of the president should not be victimized when they do not support Tangatanga. That's what Dismas has said, and it's a very fair statement.
And what about when they attack?
Actually, let me also help Bichachi. At times, just because he falls in that category of state officers, we need to call him out for something. We have seen, and maybe when he is outside this studio, he doesn't take keen time to watch news and do something. We have seen people, when we say depoliticizing public service, we do not say we depoliticize from Tangatanga. What about the people we know for a fact who are sponsored by Matiangi and company, the Gladys Wangas of this world, to Alan Printables, the deputy president and other people? They should also be stopped. And as a good example.
But that's how I wanted to help you.
In a market where everyone is throwing it.
Excuse me. That's where I wanted to help you. I said it shouldn't be the case that Matiangi is attacked for attacking Tangatanga. But neither should it be the case that Matiangi should be allowed to attack Tanga. You see, it's the same. You can't say you're partial.
Okay.
You're being partial, but on the other hand, when he's partial in favor of Kieleweke, he's not to be touched. So if he's attacking Tanga, but he's Kieleweke in his leanings in terms of how he works, by all means. So what we're saying is depoliticize it all. Matiangi, if you want to be protected, you have to be absolutely impartial, and that you're not.
Impartiality is simple
he's
as that.
not impartial. He's not impartial.
And he must know that the law will follow it even after Uhuru
Okay,
Kenyatta goes home. They will not go home with Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right.
Even Uhuru Kenyatta is immunity to prosecution. Hence, the time he hands over.
Okay. Let's take a short break right now.